So I was thinking that we could leverage the usage of Gaussian splat and AI upscalers in order to help us to create key concept art frames for developing environments. This is something that I'm kind of playing with and something that I want to use when I'm building a 3D environment and I'm using a Gaussian splat as a reference. And I just use this Gaussian splat as a reference. I go to my 3D modeling software of choice. I start modeling, texturing, look debbing, creating the environment. And at some point I ran out of ideas because I don't know, maybe I spent a couple of weeks building the environment and doing the set dressing. And I don't really know what else I should do in order to improve the environment. And, at that time, or when that time comes, usually you would ask a concept artist to do a pass on your render, some kind of paint over or something to give you ideas. But if you're working on your own, maybe you don't have the ability or the resources to do that yourself. So I think this kind of simple workflow that I have here can help you to do that. So you don't run out of ideas and run out of time, and you can start improving your 3D environment. So I have this Gaussian splat here of this environment. And as you can see, well, first of all, this Gaussian splat is not from a real location. This has been created from synthetic data. And it looks pretty cool, but as you can see, this is not the best quality Gaussian splat, right? And that is because the input that I used to train this Gaussian splat wasn't great. I didn't have like, hundreds or thousands of images in order to create a perfectly smooth Gaussian splat. So it doesn't look very good. It looks decent. I mean, from, if I want to create some kind of establishing shot from this angle, it kind of works. I can definitely use this for building my 3D environment. But some other areas, like when I look here, obviously it is a mess. I don't really know how these should look like. If I go down here, well, I see these very dark rooms over there. What should I put in there, right? Let's say that I have a shot in the final film or whatever that is something like that. What should I place inside of these rooms? And as an environment artist or generalist, well, I mean, you would come up with ideas, right? That's what we usually do. You would probably put some kind of walls in there and I don't know, some kind of objects, maybe tools, maybe some machinery, whatever it might be. But you usually would spend a lot of time kind of set dressing and working on the layout of those environments. And that is very time consuming. And kind of the same thing, right? Like let's say that I have a shot like this, and I would like to have a little bit more detail on this ramp or these stairs that lead to this shed or whatever it might be. And as an environment artist, you would try different things. You would probably break the geometry of the stairs to create something more interesting, and maybe you add a little bit more vegetation or whatever it might be. And this is a very time-consuming effort. And again, you maybe spend like a few days working on these stairs, and then you realize that it actually doesn't look any good, so you need to start all over again. And what I usually do, if I was working on something like this, I would probably do like some kind of a render, and then I would do some kind of paint over in Photoshop or any other software to give me ideas. And once that looks decent, I would start building that in 3D. Right? That's usually my process. And obviously, if you have a concept artist at your disposal, that person will probably do a better job than myself, and that will help me to improve the environment. But yeah, if that is not the case, if I'm working by myself, maybe I can use this Gaussian splat as a reference, and I can use this as an input to use with an AI upscaler to do that work for me. And then, I can very easily and very quickly create a bunch of variations. And I can pick and choose what I like and what I don't like from those variations, and then I can start building the environment in 3D. So I'm going to show you my process here, which again is extremely simple. But yeah, it starts with the Gaussian splat. So I have a Gaussian splat of this environment here in postshot. And again, you can see that it's okay in some areas, it's terrible in other areas. And I just want to create a bunch of key concept art frames that I can use while building my 3D environment. So the first thing that I have to do is obviously export this Gaussian splat, this radiant fill as PLY format. And once you have that, you can essentially get it into Houdini. You can set a bunch of cameras, pretending that those are your concept art keyframes, and then just run it through an AI upscaler and see what you can do with that. Okay, so I'm gonna show you my process here. So let me close postshot and let me go to Houdini. So what I have in Houdini is this geometry node here, and inside what I have is my PLY file, which is this this point cloud that I exported from postshot, and this is my Gaussian splat. So when you get this in Houdini, it is just points really, so you can manipulate it in any way that you want. So if there are parts of the Gaussian splat that you actually don't care about, you can just remove them. Again, this is just points. So you can add a blast and set it to points. And you know, you don't like this part of the Gaussian splat, no problem, let's get rid of that. Or if you just want to isolate a specific part, you can just do the opposite and delete non-selected and just keep the part that you actually like. And you can manipulate the points in any way that you can do in Houdini, right? This is just points. So any point transformation will work in Houdini. Obviously, you need to be a little bit careful with the attributes that come with the Gaussian splat, because we have plenty of attributes here, right? Let me get rid of that for a second. So if I go to my geometry spreadsheet, we can see that we have a lot of attributes in the points. And some of them are specific to Gaussian splat, like spherical harmonics and whatnot. So you need to make sure that you are always keeping those attributes, otherwise your Gaussian splat is not going to render correctly. But in this case, I don't really want to do any modifications. I just want to get this into Karma so I can render it to create those concept art keyframes. So, you know, in Houdini 21, we have this vague Gaussian splat node, and this one, it is creating some other attributes in the points that Karma will understand at the time of rendering. So now we get color and we get other attributes as well. And here we have some options like compute spherical harmonics. And I think this one by default is disabled, which is captures shadow casting in Karma. So if you want to cast shadows, you need to enable this one. But anyway, once we have these, we can just get it into Karma and we can render. So if I jump to Solaris, let me go here to stage. Okay, so here what I have is 4 different shots, and those would be my key concept art frames. So I'm just importing this Gaussian splat that, as you can see, it is pointing to my bake Gaussian splat node that we had in SOPs. Let's skip this for now. This is something that I'm going to show you later. We can skip all the lighting and all the material assignments as well. And what I have here is just a camera that I created. I created these cameras directly here in LOPS. You can obviously create them in SOPs as well. And if I look through that camera, that's the only camera that I have in this branch. It is like this wide establishing shot. I think I'm using like a very wide lens or like a 25mm lens. And that's what I get, right? So once we render this through Karma, and at the moment you can only render Gaussian splats in Karma using XPU, you will get something like this. So let's take a quick look at how that render looks like. It is kind of a fast render. This is being ray traced, right? So this is not a rasterization version of the Gaussian splat, which is what you usually get in other software like Postshot or any other software. Here you can actually ray trace the Gaussian splat, meaning that if you add any 3D object into the scene, it is going to be affected by the Gaussian splat. So you will get global illumination and color bleeding and shadows and reflections and whatnot. And this is how it looks. And again, it looks okay. I can definitely use this as a reference for modeling this 3D environment, but it's lacking some details, right? I mean, this would be nice as a first pass. I can definitely use this for building the structure and the slides and the pool and the stairs and everything, and to play some of this vegetation. But that would be just like the first pass. This wouldn't pass the filter or the quality check for a full CG environment, right? You would need to detail this even further. So what I figure is, well, let's render this. Let's run it through an upscaler, and that will give me more information so I can actually, create a richer environment, something that looks a little bit more detailed and looks better. So the problem with Karma, though, is that the Gaussian splats are very noisy, as you can see. And you can see that I'm using like a 4096 path trace samples in my XPU. It doesn't matter if I increase this like by 10 times, and that would be a ridiculously amount of samples for this path tracer. But the noise will never go away. That is a problem if you want to render Gaussian splats as final pixels. That's not what we're doing here. We're just creating, again, references for building this environment. But you need to be aware of that. There are other render engines, though, that handle Gaussian splats better. And I mean ray tracing Gaussian splats better and don't give you this crazy noise. I don't know what's going on with Karma here. This is in beta anyway, so I will assume that this will be better in the future. But anyway, I'm going to render these, and I rendered that already. So if I go to subs again, I have a COPNET here where the only thing that I'm doing here is kind of, let me just go to composite view. This is the render that I've done, which is an EXR render. So I'm just creating like a, like a PNG version of this. And this is essentially what I get. Okay. So the next step is to take this render into an AI upscaler, and I'm using obviously Comfy UI with an SDXL upscaler base model. So I don't need to upload any images anywhere, like these random websites where you don't really know what they are doing with your data. The good thing about Comfy UI is that you're running it locally, so you have control over everything. So I guess if you're using this in a studio, I guess at least for a concept type of work, it's fine to use it as long as it doesn't end up in the final pixels. And where this is not going to end up in the final pixels, is just something that I'm using as a reference for 3D modeling or for environment building. So I guess it will be fine. And again, it's running locally, so you're not breaking any security regulations by uploading images anywhere. So this workflow is extremely simple. Again, I'm using an XDL checkpoint. This is the render that's coming from Houdini, which is this kind of decent looking but low resolution Gaussian splat. I rendered this at this resolution, 1920 by 818. And what I'm doing here is I'm upscaling these 2 times with this upscaler. And this one goes directly to the K sampler, where I always use a fixed seed, meaning that I'm not going to get completely random things. I'm going to be able to control this a little bit. And I'm using a denoise of 0.5. So I'm introducing noise into the leading space of this image, but I'm using the image as a reference, right? And then you can either use a prompt or not use it. In here, I tried a couple of different versions, one with a prompt, one without prompt. So it's directly like an image to image type of upscaler. But here I'm just doing like abandoned water park, dirty water, overground vegetation, garbage floating in the water, whatever. And then I'm doing another version without any prompt, and you get some differences. And yeah, that goes to the K sampler. And once it has decoded the image, it is just scaling the output by 2. And at the end, I'm gonna get like an image of this resolution, right? Which is way bigger than the input that was like full HD type of resolution. All right, that's it. At the end, I'm doing a little bit of fixing the colors with a color match. So because you're adding noise to the leading space, that's going to shift your colors a little bit. And by doing this, it's going to match the colors a little bit better compared with the original image. So yeah, if we take a look at the results, we can take a look here. So this is the original render. So this is the raw Gaussian splat from Karma. And as you can see, some details are weird, it's noisy, it's lacking a lot of detail. And once I run it through the upscaler, I get something like that. So, I'm getting quite a lot of detail, like on the ground, on the walls, on the slides, on the ceiling, everywhere really. But the good thing here is that it is very consistent with the image that I input, right? Because the Gaussian splat is kind of the origin of everything here. And this looks much better, and this gives me way more information when building this 3D world than the original Gaussian splat. This is the one that I use with the prompt, and this is another version where I'm not using the prompt. And, for example, in this one here, because I use overground vegetation and garbage, it's adding a lot of garbage on the ground and some vegetation. This one is not doing that much. So there are slight differences. But the good thing is, like, overall, the structure of the image is the same because the origin is the Gaussian splat. So I can always take this image into Photoshop or Nuke and this one and kind of pick and choose the things that I like from both images and just create a new image in that way. And that would be my concept art keyframe that I will use as a reference while building this 3D environment, okay? And obviously, if I go back to Comfy, if I want to get variations, then I just need to change my seed here, and that will create new variations of the same environment. But again, the main structure and the main parts of this image, it would always be the same because we're starting from a render of a Gaussian splat, and that will never change unless we increase the denoise a lot, right? So at the moment, we're getting 50% of the image or 50% of the influence of the new generation from the Gaussian splat render, and the other 50% come from the latent space that is being driven by this prompt. And obviously, if we take this one with higher values, like we use something like 0.8, for example, the image will get less influence, this original image that we're using here. And if we use lower values, the image will get more influence than the actual prompt, meaning that we will get less details that are not present in the original image. So that is up to you. I tend to work with something around 0.50 or even lower to get more influence from the image, because I don't want to change the image drastically, right? That's not the point, because if we do that, if we set this one to 1, we're going to get something completely random, and obviously that doesn't really work, because we want to stick to the original image, that is that one. We just want to add the extra details that are not present in the original image, so we can use it for building this world. Okay, so that's kind of like the process, and this looks already much better, and this gives me definitely way more information when I'm building this environment, right? So this is something that I wanted to test. Like, I wanted to add some kind of rubble and destruction into some of these concrete elements. And, if I like this, I can just commit to this image and start building the environment in a way that mimics this concept art. All right. And then the cool thing, if I go back to Houdini, if I go back to Solaris, is that because everything is based on a Gaussian splat, we can create different keyframes for other parts of the environment. So for example, here I have a different shot. So if I check that camera, right? So now I'm looking at a different area of the environment, but the environment itself is the same thing. So if I run this again through Config UI, it's going to be very consistent, right? Because the skeleton of the environment, it is the same. So I have a bunch of different cameras here. So let me just go to camera 3. So this is another one. And this one, for example, looks really bad, right? Like we don't really have enough detail here. So what's going on inside of these dark rooms, or back there in the far background, or these stairs, this shed, how should that look like? Well, and again, as an environment artist, you know how to handle these situations. We've been in this situation many times before, where we might have some kind of photogrammetry from the set, or even a LiDAR scan, and we want to add things that are not present in that data. Well, we know how to handle these situations. We are 3D modelers or environment artists. We can do that. But again, sometimes you get stuck and you don't really know what to do next, or maybe you run out of ideas, or maybe you're just tired and you wish you had a concept artist to help you out with these type of tasks, but you don't have that for whatever reason. So I think this kind of workflow comes very handy in these situations. And I think I have another one over here. This is camera 4, and kind of the same thing, right? So I have like I think here I have like a 50mm lens or something with some shallow depth of field, or 70mm with a shallow depth of field. Shallow depth of field doesn't really work very well when you're upscaling the image, because the upscaler is going to try to add detail back there where where the background is out of focus. It's going to try to sharpen the details, and it's going to try to add details there. So that doesn't really work very well. But at the same time, we're not using these for final images or anything. We're just using this as a reference for 3D modeling or environment construction. So we actually want to see everything in focus. But if you actually wanted to create this frame where everything is out of focus, something that you can do is you can render this with no depth of field, or with everything in focus. You can run it through the AI, you can come back to Houdini, and then you can project the concept art here, and then just apply the defocus if you wanted to, right? But again, this is not something that I want to do, because I just want to create references for 3D modeling. Okay, so I just render all of those, and I run them through Config UI. And if we go back here to PureRef, I can just show you those all the shots. So here is the raw render of the Gaussian splat. And again, pretty decent. This will be good enough for me in order to build the structure, to build the slides, to build the shed and the stairs and everything. But again, once we start kind of like increasing the quality in terms of details, in terms of set dressing and whatnot, once I run this through the AI, I kind of get an image like that is giving me way more information when it comes to the rubble and the vegetation and whatnot everywhere. Also, texturing on the walls, I get way more information from here than here, where again, this will work as a first pass, but this one can help me to start adding all those extra details that make the image a little bit better. Also, the slides look much better with all these twisted and broken wires and cables. Obviously, there are areas where this upscaler is struggling, like this. This should be kind of like a metal fence. And, it's not doing a good job here, but I mean, we don't want the AI to do 100% of the work for us anyway, right? I as an environment artist, I can say, well, okay, this didn't work, but I know this is going to be a metal fence. And especially because it kind of looks like that already in the Gaussian splat. So I don't need to use every single information that I get from the AI. Okay, so I think this one is the one that I did with a prompt, and this one is the one that I did without the prompt. So we get less vegetation because the prompt where I said that I wanted overgrown vegetation and garbage is not present here. So this is closer to the original image. But again, it is pretty much the same image with less small details that came from the prompt. So again, we are achieving consistency here. So, if you take a look at these two images, they are exactly the same image, but this one has some more details than that one. Okay. If I go to the next shot, this is what I have here. And again, this doesn't look any good, but when I run it through the upscaler, I'm starting to get more details here. So, this shade has a little bit more shape. The structure is much more defined now. I can see some overgrown plants. The stair or the ramp leading into the shed is a little bit broken. So, this gives me really good information for modeling this thing. And here is just the kind of like the other version without a prompt. So again, essentially the same two images that share the same underlying skeleton for this environment. And finally, we have the shot that looks terrible in the raw Gaussian splat. And here we can see like a couple of versions. So yeah, this one kind of gives you everything that you need in order to create this ramp with a really nice set dressing and scattering of vegetation and rubble and garbage and whatnot. And this is what I was saying about the background, right? Even my background was completely out of focus. It is trying to give me something that looks sharp and in focus here. And it's doing a pretty decent job, right? So yeah, I can try to do something like that and then run it through Karma again with the defocus settings that I have in my camera and see how it looks. It doesn't really do a good job in the background because adding a lot of columns or pillars in there that don't really make a lot of sense. But again, this is where you as a 3D artist, you need to, make the right decisions to pick and choose what you like from these images and what you dislike. And this is the other version without the prompt, which is, again, slight differences between these two images, but essentially it is the same shot, right? So we just getting different variations here. So I think this workflow is kind of useful, especially when you're working on your own. And obviously you can do this not only with Gaussian splats, you can do this with your own renders, right? So if you already have these as a 3D environment, you can definitely use this, run it through the upscaler, and that will be some kind of paint over that you would usually do in Photoshop. But we are doing this way more efficiently, and hopefully it can speed up your workflows. But I think it's a really good idea to start with Gaussian splats, and I believe that at least in the visual effects industry, we're gonna get more Gaussian splats as references, especially because you can create Gaussian splats from just a bunch of images. And again, even if it doesn't look good, which is the case with this Gaussian splat that I have here, you can run it through the upscaler to get more details, right? So depending on what you're doing, you might get a really good Gaussian splat if it is a set that you actually need to rebuild because there's going to be like a CG takeover, or if you need to do like a set extension or set augmentation of a real set, you might get like really good photography. So your Gaussian splat will be really good from the get-go. But even again, if an art director or a set designer sends you like 12 images of the set, you can create probably like a mediocre Gaussian splat and just improve it with an upscaler to get better references. Yeah, and then there is another cool thing, which is this. In Comfy UI, I'm always working with a fixed seed. If I run this same image again, I'm gonna get exactly the same output. I'm not getting anything random here. So if I add new elements to my 3D scene, and I run it again through the same case sampler, I'm gonna get exactly the same environment plus the new 3D objects that I'm adding to the scene. So the 3D objects that I'm adding to the scene, those things are gonna change in the upscaler version, but the rest is going to remain the same that we had before, right? So this is something that I would do as well. So for example, if I go to my first frame here, which is this one, right? If I render this quickly through XView, this is what we get, right? But let's say we get a comment that says, you know, we would like to add whatever, like some kind of a structure here and some kind of broken structure over there, and maybe like a car that is floating in the pool after a wreckage or something like that, right? We can add those 3D elements. If we already have the assets, we can add them because we're in a 3D software, right? Or you can just block something out very quickly to give you information about what you need to build later, right? So to give you an example, because I'm lazy and I don't have any assets here and I didn't want to spend any time, I just did something extremely simple because this point cloud, at the end of the day, it is just a point cloud, right? I mean, the Gaussian splat is just a point cloud. So you can quickly convert this into some kind of geometry, right? And there are many ways of doing that in Houdini. I just did something extremely simple here, which is creating a BDB from particles. And again, this geometry doesn't need to be perfect by any means. If you want to make it look better, you can. But in this case, I'm just creating some kind of BDB from particles. I'm smoothing those particles out a little bit so they fuse together a little bit better, and then converting that to geometry. So all of a sudden, I have a very crude representation of the Gaussian splat as a 3D model. I can use this for placing 3D objects, right? So if I jump out, if I go here, I just created like this extremely simple asset. So here I have the Gaussian splat geometry representation that I can use for just placing assets really. So if I take this merge here and I put that one there for a second, now I can see the asset that I model in the context of the environment, right? And I'm bringing also the camera from LOPs because I created a camera in LOP. So with a LOP import, you can just bring the shot camera and you can look through that camera. So you can see things in the perfect context, right? So yeah, if I go here, I just created that asset just as a quick thing, right? Imagine that I got a comment that says, well, we would like to add some kind of damage structure here of any kind. It's like, okay, I don't know what I should model. That's the only feedback that I got, that I should have some kind of damage structure. What does that even mean? I don't know, but let me just try like 2 or 3 variations using the upscaler and see what I get. So, I just made like a box there that I kind of destroyed with an RPD material fracture. And at the end of the day, I just get like that. What is that? I don't know. It's going to be some kind of damage structure that based on the environment, I would assume is made of concrete or made of bricks or made of plaster or who knows. So what I can do next is I can go back to Solaris. Okay, Solaris. And I'm here where I was before, just looking at the first keyframe concept art for this shot. And I'm just bringing my structure that is there. I'm just repositioning it a little bit better. I'm adding some materials, and I'm adding a light as well. And obviously, this is some kind of random HDRI that I'm using. Ideally, if this was captured with the purpose of being used for real, you would probably get also an HDRI of the same environment from the Gaussian splat, which is not the case in my case, but doesn't really matter. And when I render this, let's see what I get. But I should get the Gaussian splat with my structure that I modeled there. And as you can see, I just gave it some kind of brick texture using triplanars. And that looks horrible, but I can run that through the upscaler and see what it comes up with. And I might get some ideas to, what I should model for this structure and how it should look. And the cool thing is, again, because I'm using a fixed seed in ComfyUI, the environment is going to look exactly the same. And the only thing that is going to change is the new noise. And the new noise in the image is only this 3D model, right? So if I go back to PureRef, I can see here that this is my raw render that you just saw from Solaris. And the upres version of that is this. And this is exactly the same image as that one. Every single pixel should be the same, except for the new noise that was introduced into the K-sampler, which is this structure that I model. So all of a sudden I'm getting, some kind of concept for that blocking geometry that I created in Houdini. And it's like, oh, okay, so this should be some kind of all concrete that is all kind of falling apart. And maybe this was some kind of a shed of some kind. And I can see how I can integrate this into the ground so it looks cool. Over here, I just made like another version. And again, it's using the input. So kind of the shape and form of my structure, it is always the same. Kind of the same colors in the bricks, like a dark brick color, kind of destroy and damage. And this is just a very simple test, but imagine that you would have dressed this environment with a lot of things like a car wreckage over there, and maybe some garbage bags over there, and maybe here, I don't know, whatever it might be, right? Or maybe you added more vegetation in Houdini and you scatter like a lot of things on the ground. You will run that through the upscaler, and it will give you hopefully some ideas on how to improve that when modeling, texturing, and look deving the environment. Okay. So this is the workflow. Again, extremely simple, but I thought it can be very useful to combine Gaussian splats and upscalers in order to help you out when it comes to getting ideas for your 3D environments.